speaking on the topic, making life decisions. And we are studying tonight the life and the decisions of one great woman, Sarai, or Sarah, the wife of Abraham. And then from there we will go. Life is all about making choices, all about making decisions. Either to choose A and forgo B. We make so many choices in our lives. Some of those choices will come back to us in different forms. The question we are considering today is, or the question we are considering tonight are, what informs my choice making? How do I determine the rightness and the wrongness of my decisions? So as I said, we are going to study this in the light of the life and the decisions made by Sarah. Sarah, as we know, being the wife of Abraham, was one of the greatest women in the Bible. In fact, it remains the first woman mentioned in that hall of faith as known in Hebrews chapter 11. She was just a great woman that through her so many things began to happen to the people of Israel, to the chosen people. But yet, Sarah was terrible. It was horrible in one aspect. And that is the aspect we're going to look into today. It doesn't define her life, but we're going to consider it in the light of our own lives and decisions. And we're reading from Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 to 4. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed to what Sarai said. So, after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. Now, Sarah made one major decision, the decision to give out her maidservant to Abraham so that she will bear her children, and thus she will build a family through her. And the second decision she made within the same Genesis chapter 16 was the decision to maltreat her after she had become pregnant. But in a whole, we can say she made one major decision, the decision to give out her maidservant to her husband. Now, what informed Sarah's decision? What made her think that way? What made her go for that particular option? So many factors instigated that particular decision. Number one, she was desperate. There is a funny saying that desperate situations call for desperate measures. That is to say that when you are desperate, the rightness and wrongness of whatever you do is not called into question. That when you are in this desperate situation, you can do even what was not acceptable. She was desperate. And because she was desperate, first of all, she convinced herself. She told a lie to herself and believed it to be true because she wanted to justify her desperation. And she lied against God just because she wanted to fulfill or to satisfy her desperation. How did she lie to God? She said to Abraham, "You know, God has kept me from being barren." But it's not true. It was the same God who promised her, "Look, woman, you and your husband are going to give you a child." So God was not responsible in that way because God has made a promise, "I'm going to give you a child." But because she was desperate, she wanted to convince herself, and she told this lie to herself, convinced herself that it's true, and she told a lie against God. And sometimes we find ourselves in such situations that when we are desperate, we can do anything, even what is not dignifying, just to satisfy our desperation. And because she was desperate, she pushed her husband into listening to her and to play along. The people of the world will say, desperate situations call for desperate measures. But I'm saying to you today that desperate situations for a child of God calls instead for prayerful discernment and caution. Because when you are desperate, everything moves you to satisfy that drive. Sarah was desperate. That was the first factor. The second factor was pressure. There was that pressure, and it's still there today, about and around any woman who is barren. A childless woman is taken to be another man, because it is taken that a woman is configured to be a fruit-bearing person, and therefore when there is no child forthcoming, it is believed that perhaps you have married another man. So there was that pressure from the society. Although the act of giving you out your maid servant or your servant to your wife or to your husband within that time of Jewish culture was not something bad according to their culture, but the pressure to be pregnant, to be a mother, was so much on Sarah. I call it social pressure. To be barren was a stigma. So Sarah was under intense pressure that she forgot the promise made her. And sometimes also in our lives, when we are being pressured by friends, by peer groups, by family, by society, even by the church, we begin to take an uninformed decision. We begin to give in to certain things. So, dear friends, the second factor that made this great woman to make this wrong decision was pressure. There was enormous pressure on her shoulder. Third point, or third factor that instigated her making this decision was her desire to satisfy her husband. She wanted her husband to be happy. She wanted her husband to keep loving her. And that's why the Bible said, please, she said to Abraham, please take my maidservant and sleep with her, then I can make a family through her. She wanted to satisfy. She wanted to put a smile on her husband's face. I have a friend, a very good friend of mine in Nigeria, but she's now in Germany. While I was in Nigeria, she was one of the pious girls around in the parish. But she went to Germany to further her education. In the process, she met a guy. And unfortunately, they fell in love as they usually explain to us. In the process, this guy she fell in love with was an atheist. And she, a religious and devoted Catholic, always with her medals and Bible. But because the new boyfriend wasn't very comfortable with those religious acts, my friend had to burn his Bible, his chaplet, his religious articles because she wanted to move in with this young man. She destroyed her identity just to satisfy this boyfriend of hers. Sometimes to maintain our friendship, to maintain our relationship, to maintain our family, to maintain our marriage, we have done some horrible things. And to maintain my ministry and my dignity. Am I lost? Hello?
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes, please.
I'm so scared, so I was wondering. Okay. So sometimes to maintain our relationship and to keep it, we sometimes give in to certain things. We do so many horrible things just to maintain the home, the marriage. The fourth factor was for her own security. She did that for her own security. As a woman, she wouldn't like to lose her husband or her marriage. Because at that time, marriage was a symbol of womanhood. A sort of, if you're out of your husband's house, certainly you are a sort of looked down upon. So for her security and status and prestige, she took that decision. And sometimes I find myself in that situation. I give in to so many things because I want to remain in the eyes of everybody wonderful priest. Just for my security, just for my secrecy, I do rubbish things. So for her security, she said, if I do this, I will remain the wife of Abraham. I wouldn't mind the consequences. And she gave in. The fifth point, Sarah was emotionally overwhelmed. You see, expressing frustration, anger, joy, and whatever kinds of emotion, these are fundamental aspects we always encounter in our daily lives. These emotions actually, however, hinder our ability to make an informed decision. For example, when you are angry, when you are so overwhelmed by anger, you might make more mistakes responding to an email, returning a call, reacting. If you had calmed yourself down, perhaps you would have answered well. We have sent a more decent email or reply. In Sarah's case, he was overwhelmed by emotion. And that emotion was number one, she was jealous. And I have come to learn in life that I should not make a permanent decision, a permanent choice over a temporary situation. I'm not trying to castigate or paint bad people who commit suicide. But that is usually the reason they give. That the situation has become overwhelming. So they make a decision, a permanent decision. Sometimes a decision can never be reversed. They make such a decision over a temporary situation. And that was how our brother Esau sold his birthright in Genesis chapter 25. What happened? Esau came back from farm. He was hungry. He came back. He was so hungry. And his brother has a porridge. Perhaps yam. I don't know. What could that be? And he was so famished that he needed to eat something. So he said, please, can you give me a little of this food? I am dying of hunger. He couldn't control the hunger. And the brother, being a wise man, said, yes, I'm going to give you that, but you're going to give me your birthright. And that was how Isaac said, oh, just like that? Yes, okay. He sacrificed his birthright on the altar of a plate of porridge because he couldn't. He made a permanent decision over an emotional situation, and that's how he lost out. Dear friends, you see, people have closed their bank accounts because either they were so excited over a situation. Remember, the king, Herod, she said, because he was so overwhelmed by the performance of the young girl, he said, please ask me whatever. He was under emotional situation that he made that decision. Ask me whatever. And the young girl said, please give me the head of John the Baptist. That's all I ask of you. I have come to learn that I need to be careful not to make a decision when I am angry and not to make a promise when I am excited. Many have closed their bank account because of that. You are so excited, you give someone an open check. And life has taught me also that when my emotional state is super active, my brain automatically goes on holidays. Two of them don't work together. They don't stay at the same path, not at all. So when I am super excited, emotionally excited, my brain switches off, it goes away. And that was what happened to Sarah. Because she was so jealous, she had to also expel this young pregnant lady. Finally, Sarah did the decision, and it was wrong because he didn't see beyond her nose. She didn't consider the consequences of what would be, or the consequences of her actions, of her decisions. You see, every choice we make in this life carries with it consequences. And modern theology will say that in life, we are free to make choices. But every choice we make carries with it corresponding obligations, corresponding consequences, corresponding blessings. Some of these consequences or repercussions can be temporal, some can be permanent or eternal. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes,
we
Father,
can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. So
bro.
the consequences of our actions must be examined. If I do this, what will be the consequences? What will be the repercussions? What will be the blessings instead? Sarah didn't consider those things. She was looking at the short term. All I need in this moment is a child. She wasn't considering what could be the long-term effect of the choice. She was looking at the short term, the immediate benefits. And I tell you, dear friends, that particular choice Sarah made has continued to live with us today. Because you know what? When Hagar became pregnant, she gave birth to a son called Ishmael. And 13 years later, Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to that promised child called Isaac. And eventually, Hagar was expelled from Abraham's house. And the Bible says Ishmael became the father of war tribes. And up to today, that enmity between Arabs and Jews are still there, traced to this particular decision. The consequence of that particular decision outlived the maker. And the descendants, all of us, are into it. So when I want to make a decision, do I say, will I be proud of what I'm deciding today? Will I be proud? The decision I'm making today, will I be proud to say it is mine? Finally, to make a bad decision in life is not just, it's one step. It's just one step. What you do after you have erred in your decision making is, for me, the most important. Because just looking at the life of our sister Sarah, when she made that decision, what happens next? She discovered she made a wrong decision. But what did he do? What did she do? She started blaming God. She said, God made me barren. And as if that wasn't enough, she shifted the blame to Abraham and said, look at you, Abraham. You went and slept with this girl. And then she shifted the blame again to Hagar, the wife, the lady who was pregnant, and started maltreating her. But the Bible said to us, where we read, that it was Sarah who took this lady and gave her to Abraham. But when she discovered she made a mistake, she exonerated herself, blamed God, blamed Abraham, and blamed Hagar. And Abraham himself, also exonerated himself and told his wife, Sarah, please, this lady Hagar is in your hands. Do with her whatever you want. She exonerated himself, obligated his responsibility as the father, because he doesn't want to get involved in that decision making or in the consequence of that bad decision. And Hagar has herself blamed Sarah and Abraham for using her. So in this whole situation, everybody blamed the other person. I still believe that if Adam and Eve had said, sorry, Lord, we are sorry for eating the forbidden fruit, their punishment wouldn't have been the same, perhaps. But Adam shifted it to Eve. Eve shifted it to serpent, and serpent couldn't talk. And here comes the hammer of God. So when I make a bad decision, what do? Number one, I take responsibility. No blame game. People might have contributed to it. People must have pressured you. Factors must have made you to do it. But the fact that you took the final decision, you must take responsibility of your action or for your actions. In my seminary days, our rector then used to tell us, if you are caught doing anything wrong, you don't need to explain anything because you have no reason for doing something wrong. The first thing you should do is to say, I am sorry, I accept responsibility. However, look at what made me do it. So when I am wrong, I must accept responsibility. Making people seem to be involved, bringing people into my bad decision wouldn't exonerate me. It may lessen the culpability, but it won't take away fully the responsibility. Sarah failed there. When I make a mistake, what do I do? A bad decision, a bad choice. I learn from it. I don't need to beat myself to stupor. It is part of my growth and development. It is part of human experience. I pick up something from what I have done wrong and move on. People, when they make a bad choice, instead of trying to correct it, they say, oh, it has done. Anyway, I go on with that. No, don't beat yourself stupid, or don't think that you have made the most horrible mistakes. You are just human, and it is possible that you're going to make mistakes. So what you do is pick something from your mistake, from your bad choice, from your bad decision, and move on. Also, third point, how to correct an already made wrong decision. Entrust all to God. People say our God is a God of second chance. I think I would say rather that our God is a God of endless chances as far as we're still on earth. His chances are endless. When I make a mistake, God understands. He's not surprised that Nathaniel made a mistake. He's not surprised that I made a bad choice. But he will be surprised and disappointed if I refuse to get up from my mistakes. And that will be the shock I will give God. I will say it that way. The shock I will give God is not that I have failed. No, it is what I have done. That after I have fallen, I was able to get up. God will be happy. This is my son. So, dear friends, insofar as God may not take away the consequences of our bad decisions, He gives us the grace to carry through. And that is what we see in the life of Sarah. God didn't take away the consequences. The consequences are there, but that promise He made, He still fulfilled it. So why should I beat myself to stupor? God has always given multiple chances, endless chances. Finally, dear friends, whenever we are to make decisions as children of God, please get God involved. Try to whisper your plans to God. Try to ask for His opinions. If Sarah has continuously gone to God while He was waiting on that promise, God would have said to her, Sarah, calm down. I'm still in charge. But she never consulted God. She never saw the face of God. She never whispered to God what she was planning. She kept it to herself. And that was why she made that terrible mistake. She couldn't wait for the promise to come. So, dear friends, what I'm saying today is life is all about the choices we make. Life is all about the decisions we make. But certain factors will always come in, either to mar our decisions or to make it beautiful. But the best of it all is that we must get God involved. Whisper to Him our plans. Whisper to Him whatever we intend to do. Remember, in life, you are free to choose from so many options. But whatever choice you make in life, whatever choice I make in life, comes corresponding consequences, corresponding obligations, corresponding responsibility, and corresponding blessings or repercussions. Thank you so much.